let us now move to the recommendation to waive the 48-hour rule.
Thank you, President. May I have a motion to waive the 48-hour rule to present one human resource item? There's only one listed.
Is there a motion to waive the 48-hour rule?
So move.
Second.
It has been properly moved and second that we waive the 48-hour rule to take action on a resolution by the superintendent.
Resignation.
I mean, resignation. Is there further discussion on the motion to waive the 48-hour rule?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Waiving the 48-hour rule entails some kind of an emergency, something extraordinary and unforeseen. In this case, this is not so. We have been discussing this since last year, and last time we have discussed this at executive sessions in January and again in February. There was plenty of time to put this on the agenda and to discuss it at the review session or some other session before this session. There is really no need to have put this and asking a 48-hour rule waiver. So this is my position, and
Thank you.
This is incompetence, is what it is.
It's okay. Let me, Attorney Bradshaw, can you provide some clarity here for us?
I think the clarity is best discussed in executive session. If the board would like to wait to vote until afterwards.
Okay. Good. Is it the will of the board to move this to executive session discussion?
no, Mr. President. This is, well, let me just jump ahead and say that I'm personally against this even coming up for vote, because I don't see why, on many different grounds, but primarily on fiscal grounds. And I don't see why we should do something like that for a very qualified administrator. There is plenty of work that should be done and could be done in the district, and to pay somebody over $200,000 to see him go is absolutely against everything I stand. We cannot give out this much money to one individual as essentially unearned income. I am totally okay with paying everybody their salary and benefits for the work that they're doing. And there is plenty of work that should be done and could be done in this district. And I think this particular individual could continue to serve the district and could continue to do a lot of the work. So I don't see why this is even coming up, and especially with the request to 48-hour rule. And I know that one of the board members who's not present also feels very strongly, just like me, about this. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Figueroa. Board Member Lacy?
I think when you do have an issue that the board members feel very strongly about, I think that that's a violation of mutual respect amongst board members when you bring it up when a board member isn't present. And I think, so this case, I mean, I've had situations where things have been brought up that I felt strongly about when I had no warning. There was nothing on the agenda. It was brought up and voted upon. And I felt a very big violation of our mutual respect as board members. I think that I don't think we can do this without a board member actually getting proper notification.
Mr. President,
Okay. Dr. Roundtree?
I'm stunned at the reactions, because every board member on this board, every member of this board has had plenty of opportunity to discuss this issue. And at the previous executive session, the board member who's absent, Sheila Taylor, was at that session. So this is not a surprise or shocking to her whatsoever. She's not here tonight. We don't know why. We haven't even heard from her. I haven't. I can only speak for myself. So this has been legitimately placed on the agenda. We voted up or down. That's my position.
Anyone else? Okay. Let us.
Yes, Dr. Walker, I kind of, agree with Board Member Roundtree in that this discussion has went on for far too long. I actually believe decisions that were made earlier were not the correct decisions. And I believe this is the only way for this board to ratify that incorrect decision and move forward for the best interests of the district. And I'm prepared to vote on it.
Okay, let us move ahead on voting on the waiving the 48-hour rule. Is there further discussion? Mrs. Abraham?
President Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Bagheera,
No.
Mr. Lacy,
No.
Mr. Lee,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree.
Yes.
Let us,
4 yeses.
okay, so it's approved with 4 affirmative votes and 2 nay votes. Let us now move to consider the
Buyout because of personality conflict.
the recommendation that's before us.
Thank you, Board President.
Sure.
May I have a motion to approve the following items? D, E, and F. We will do together. Those are consultant services and contracts and agreements.
No.
That's not what happens. You vote on the one issue that
Yeah, we have
you voted for 48 hours.
rule. Yeah. We have to vote.
I motion to accept the superintendent's recommendations D, E, and F.
I second that.
You have to vote on the first one.
Why under parliamentary procedure do we have to do that?
Because that's the one we addressed.
And there's nothing in parliamentary procedure that says you have to move immediately to that issue.
And there's nothing that says you shouldn't. It's just
Well,
common sense.
the thing that says you shouldn't is that I made a motion,
The motion was seconded. It
and
is
the
a
motion
valid
was seconded. So we deal with motions as they're brought before us. You can vote that motion down if you wish.
Okay. There's a motion before us. It has been properly moved and second that we move to consider items, is that C, D, and E?
No, do.
It's consultant services and contracts and agreements.
And human resources.
And human resources.
And human resources. Unless the agenda I'm looking at, D is human resources,
D, E, and F.
E is consultant services, and F is contracts and agreements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the motion was about D, E, and F. It's not about C and G, which can come up next. So right now, we're just dealing with D, human resources, E, consultant services, and F, contracts and agreements. Those three items.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
thank you, sir. I would especially like to commend the administration for moving forward on placing associate directors at our transportation hub, some of who are with us tonight. This is going to go a long way in making sure that we have efficient and effective practices there, and our constituents are really looking forward to an even better transportation system. And I'm glad we're getting Mr. Rosenberger the help that he needs there. So thank you, Mr. President.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
So I will withdraw my second while,
Okay,
You amend the
we want to
motion.
deal with that issue separately. I didn't realize it was part of human resources also. So I would withdraw my motion also. I don't care what order you want to go in.
I'm just going in order.
Yeah. So if you want to, if Hazel, you need to make a motion, if you want to
I
deal with.
will. D, E, and F. I move that we vote on D, E, and F.
Well, then you might, well, no, I want to separate the motion. G, well, no,
This
but
is this game. play.
Mr. Lawrence, no, this is not a game, and I don't appreciate, Mr. President, I believe that's out of order to say that this is,
think it's very
that's talking,
manipulative.
I'm
May I have a
sorry.
point of order, please? Let us move with Mr. Lacy with your moving toward
I
the motion.
Let's separate the issue, we can deal with one issue, because there are people that want to vote differently, that's the only reason.
Sure.
We allow people to vote differently. So there's one issue that has to do with Mr. Lawrence. Okay, and that is in D. I don't know what number in D. Does somebody have the number? Number one at the very bottom. And G, both of those have to do with Mr. Lawrence. So if you want to make a motion about that right now, that's perfectly acceptable. Or if you do not, I will make a motion to accept all of D except for any part of it that deals with Mr. Lawrence and E and F. Okay. Then that is my motion.
Okay,
All of D except for that which deals with Mr. Lawrence, E and F.
I second that motion.
okay, it has been properly moved and second that we deal with all of D except the item that deals with Mr. Lawrence, as well as as well as D and F, E and F. Okay. Okay. Is that further discussion? All those, I think we're ready to, let us vote.
President Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Baguero,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes?
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
I abstain.
5 yeses, 1 abstain.
Recommended separately, yes.
Okay, so then moving forward, looking back at D, Human Resources, at the very bottom, it says to be included if the 48-hour waiver has been granted, and that is item number 1. And then that would follow along with G, which is a resolution for a settlement agreement.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
Second the motion.
Okay, it has been properly moved and second that we will now consider D1 and G. Is there further discussion on this motion? Okay, Dr. Bagera?
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we got to this point, I'd like to reiterate the fact that I, as well as a few other board members, are staunchly opposed to this on many different grounds. But I think above all, right now, to us as the second poorest district that just went through a RIF on fiscal grounds, I cannot, in good conscience, allow to pay over $200,000 to somebody who's not going to be working here. That does not make any sense to me. That is not good business. That is not good educational policy. There is plenty of work that can be done and should be done in this district, and this individual, Mr. Lawrence, is qualified to do that work. If he's getting paid for that work, he should be doing that. I don't understand why the board would allow something like this, where it would get somebody to resign, leave the district, and then give a massive payment of over $200,000. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I cannot possibly vote for something like this. And my views have been well known to this board. I've been outspoken about this in executive sessions for several sessions in a row. I've stated that many times, so this is not a surprise. I've warned about this well in advance. Thank you.
Dr. Roundtree?
My position is really clear. It's very simple and straightforward. Treat people the way in which you want to be treated. There is a conflict, and people, we have a mechanism for that. One of the options is to buy people out. That's a fair thing to do. We're not giving him bonus money. We're not giving him incentive money. We're giving him what's due. In our country, we have something called a contract, and that's a bond, and your word ought to be your bond. And if you have a contractual agreement, you find a way to work it out, and if you can't work it out, buy him out. As simple as that, as straightforward as that. We vote not to harm a teacher because she didn't have a license because of her livelihood. This is a similar situation. Not exactly the same, but it's similar. Treat people the way in which you want to be treated. That's just basically it for me. It's not about the person's name. I have no allegiance to the person, but I have allegiance to doing the right thing. And justice demands from me to speak out against any form, any activity that is unfair. And I'm in my conscience, I'm just going to treat a person as fair as I can, because that's how I want to be treated. That's it.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Yes, Dr. Roundtree, thank you. My position, also similar to Dr. Roundtree, has been this. This whole issue was not dealt with properly to begin with. And holding someone on administrative leave this long without the insurance, to me, is mind-boggling. I understand everybody's point, and I'll remind Dr. Bagaroff, when this issue first came to us, it was under his watch, and how it was handled, to me, was incorrectly then. And I think we're doing a disservice and a disrespect to someone who has so much to give, to be held like in jail without a charge, versus letting them go on and live their life. I think the right thing for this district is to do is to let this individual walk away from this district with their pride and their respect for what they have done for this district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Bagaroff, and then Mr. Lacy.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This individual clearly did not want to walk away from the district, which is why this has taken this long. These negotiations have been going on for a very long time. This individual did not want to leave, and he doesn't have to leave, because there is plenty of work, like I've mentioned before, for him to do. That's first. Second, this is not a corporation. This is not the business world. This is taxpayers' money. to give out over $200,000 to somebody who hasn't worked for that period is not right. This is not some golden parachute situation. This is not something that this Board of Education should be doing because it's absolutely wrong. We are scrambling to find dollars for our programs. We're doing all kinds of things to minimize our expenses, to apply for more grants, to solicit donations. And here we are, just handing over $200,000 to a person who is perfectly willing and able and capable of doing some good work in this district. If there is a personality conflict, that's something that can be easily addressed. There are all kinds of special trainings and courses and all kinds of other great initiatives that could be handled at a much lower cost. But I really do not understand how can we, in good conscience, adopt the most egregious practices of the corporate world and give out essentially a golden parachute at taxpayers' expense to somebody who didn't even want to leave this district in the first place. So that doesn't make any sense to me, and that's why I am once again appealing to the collective conscience of this board to remember that they're dealing with taxpayers' money and that we are one of the poorest, the second poorest district. We simply don't have the luxury to give out hundreds of thousands of dollars like this. This is very bad. This is a very bad precedent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lacy?
Yes. I don't believe anyone really has the entitlement or the right to get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for not to do nothing, to leave. No one is being imprisoned by the Dayton public school system under the, with regard to this issue. Just today, we had a meeting about summer session. $200,000 would go a long way towards summer session. I'm sure, I wasn't able to stay for the meeting, but I'm quite sure a lot of what was going through people's mind, if it wasn't in discussion, is how we're going to pay for summer session to try to keep our students from sliding. This is money that needs to go towards educating our children, not following the worst practices of our private corporations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Let me speak because I haven't been silent in these conversations, especially in our executive sessions. And my colleagues on this board know my position. I stay with that position. I stay with the position that I vocalized in the past, and I don't need to do it tonight. But I am not silent in this decision. And I think that's important for the listening audience, the viewing audience to know. I think we're ready to vote.
President Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Bagheera,
No.
Mr. Lacy,
No.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
The motion
yeses.
carries 4-2.